Tonight on Breaking Truth Network, we expose a story so disturbing, so brutal, it's shaking the foundations of U.S. immigration policy. Hundreds of Venezuelan men were deported under Trump's orders, but instead of freedom, they were sent into hell itself. El Salvador's CECOT prison. What happened inside is now being called torture, and the U.S. knew. Investigative reporters from ProPublica, Texas Tribune, and Rebel Alliance Investigates have uncovered the stories of deported men who say they were beaten, shackled, and left for dead. Now freed and back in Venezuela, they're finally speaking out.
That's the headline of a new joint investigation that reveals how the hundreds of Venezuelan men deported by the Trump administration to El Salvador, then sent to Venezuela, say they endured months of physical and mental abuse inside the Salvadoran mega prison CECOT. Though happy to be home in Venezuela, they say the fact that they were released is proof of how senseless their detentions were.
When we landed in El Salvador, I was by a window and I saw thousands of officers around the planes. An officer from El Salvador got on board and he said, either you get off the easy way or the hard way.
The prison director told us, "Welcome to hell, where you enter alive and leave dead."
Inside El Salvador's mega prison, these men say they were welcomed to hell. Their heads smashed into concrete, shackles tearing into their ankles, guards beating them unconscious. When the Red Cross finally came, inmates tried to speak up. The price? A brutal beating, rubber bullets, pepper spray, convulsions, suicides attempted. And for what? Over 230 Venezuelans were deported to El Salvador under the Trump administration. But here's the truth. 197 of them had no criminal record in the US. Internal government documents show the Trump administration knew this.
And that the Trump administration was aware of this. As President Trump was saying, we're going after the worst of the worst, the rapists and the murderers.
But behind the scenes, they were just migrants. Some were asylum seekers. Some had families. Few had convictions. None deserved what came next. Investigative reporter Peril Treviso spent months interviewing families, combing through records in the US, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, and Peru, building the most comprehensive picture of what really happened.
Yeah, so we obtained, in addition to the background information that I described, we also obtained internal government record that showed how the government itself was labeling them, whether they had criminal convictions in the U.S., whether they had pending charges, or they were deemed immigration violators, meaning they had only violated immigration laws. And so not only does this match what others had reported, but it shows that the administration itself knew, even when they were portraying them as the violent criminals that deserve to be sent to a prison in a country that was not their own, potentially indefinitely, they actually knew that the vast majority did not have convictions in the U.S. And we found that, from those six, half a dozen of them had convictions for what would be deemed violent crimes.
The U.S. State Department says it's not responsible. El Salvador says the U.S. is. So who answers for the torture? Who owns the human rights violations?
It has been a dirty policy. The United States sent us to El Salvador so that El Salvador could do the dirty work that the U.S. couldn't. And justice will only come through the truths and testimonies of each of us.
This is more than a policy failure. It's a moral collapse. A chapter the U.S. government wants buried. But these men survived to make sure it never is. Like, share, and subscribe to Breaking Truth Network. The truth matters even when it hurts.